Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for today's Small Business Navigator Program Request for Proposals information session. This session is being recorded and will be available on our program webpage in the coming days. My name is Felicia Escover. I'm a Special Projects Manager with the City of Dublin with our Economic Development team, and I'll be facilitating today's session, and I'll be your point of contact for this RFP and the Small Business Navigator Program going forward. So today we're going to be covering some program background. We'll review the RFP, and then we're going to open it up to some questions. If you have questions as I go through the presentation, please feel free to add those in the Q&A or the chat, and I'll try to work them in or address them at the end of the session. Before we get started, I just wanted to note a couple of things. First, this session is intended for consultants who provide support to local businesses and are interested in submitting a proposal. This is not necessarily for small businesses who are interested in getting assistance through the program, although those folks are welcome to stay on if they'd like to know more about this process. And second, we will not be covering program specifics like the referral process, report templates, work orders, some of those more detailed things. That will be later on after the vendors have been selected. We'll host an orientation so that we can provide more information closer to the program launch. And so with that said, we are going to jump in. So starting with some background, the Small Business Navigator Program is new to the City of Dublin, and it's really intended to provide timely technical support to small business owners via qualified service providers and consultants like yourselves. The program, we feel, is an innovative approach to addressing some of the concerns of our local business community by providing them with access to timely and relevant support in kind of these one-off areas that necessarily can't typically provide support with. So just touching on a couple things, this is an initiative that's in our business recovery playbook. This initiative was identified after the economic development team did a series of business surveys and walking tours and hosted some business roundtables. And we kind of determined that there's a lot of very specific niche things that we can't help them with at the city level, but that they would need help with. Some things like leases and marketing and some architecture designs, that type of thing. And so this program is really based on the needs of our business community, and we're happy to launch it this year. And so now we're going to jump into the RFP itself. And so the document is available online, so you can follow along that way. I do have a screenshot on each of the slides so that you can kind of visualize where that section of the RFP is. We're going to start at the beginning and then kind of work our way down. So this is going to be the first part of the RFP. So this is the introduction. It just provides a brief overview of the program and lists the technical support categories that we're looking for proposals in. And it's important just to keep these letters in mind because you'll have to use them later on when submitting your proposal. So we're looking for contractors in each of these areas: business planning, marketing, space design, technology, broker services, DEI training, disaster preparedness, graphic design, legal services. And we know there's kind of a range of legal services that are provided. So looking for employment and real estate and kind of general legal assistance, human resources, and financial guidance. And so these are the areas that were identified through our business community. And we've also talked with various stakeholders to make sure that we had a fully inclusive list. And so the final part of this introduction session just states that we are looking to award multiple contracts to multiple specialists so that we have a big bench. Our intention is to have 1-year contracts with a 1-year option to extend. And so that is our introduction section. So moving on to the next part is an overview of the process. And so this is just going to provide you with some information in terms of submission requirements. So all we're asking for is one electronic copy is provided to us, so via email in a PDF format, maximum of 30 pages. That 30 pages does not include a table of contents or resume, so those would be attachments, but the meat of it can be a maximum of 30 pages. It provides some specific details like use a 12-point font, that type of thing. And one key thing to note here is this is the first time we see, or this might be the second time actually, we see the due date. And so the due date is in this section and you'll see it sprinkled throughout the RFP. And so proposals are due Friday, February 10th at 4 p.m. So we must receive those by 4 p.m. in order to include them in the review process. And so that's high level what is covered in the overview of the process. And then we move on to the schedule for the RFP. And so this is about the third section in there. The RFP was launched on January 12th. Today we're having our info session. The deadline to submit questions is February 1st. If those questions result in some new or different information or changes to the RFP, those will be posted online on February 3rd. If nothing is posted at that time, then we can assume that there was no addendum introduced, no changes to the proposal. Again, proposals are due February 10th, and from there we'll have a subcommittee review those proposals, and if interviews are necessary, those will happen towards the end of February. And again, those are tentative. That may change. We may opt to do more or less, but just to give you a sense of the timeline. And then finally, we're hoping to bring the contracts to City Council in March in order for them to consider and adopt them. And so now we move on to the scope of work. And so this section describes what working with the city on this program would entail. So again, you see the list of technical categories. The next section covers the work of the consultant. And so this is essentially what you would be doing if you agree to submit a proposal and if you were selected. And it's really kind of laid out chronologically. So the first kind of order of business is working with the city to execute a task order. So we're all clear on what the project is. And this will be the first step in getting things started. Next up is that the business, you all would reach out to the small business that submitted the request in order to connect with them and kind of get the assistance process started. And we're asking for folks to do that within 3 days, since some of these requests are going to be time sensitive. And so let's see, from there, then you'll provide the one-on-one assistance. So that can be virtual, that could be in person. And again, that'll be based on what's written in the task order. During that process, you'll document the one-on-one sessions, including how much time you spent, any notes, that type of thing. We may ask for a survey or a report at the end, and then you'll submit an invoice. So that's generally how the process is going to work. Again, we'll have a different onboarding session, an orientation for those selected consultants to go over this more in depth, but this is essentially the process. We'll have a work order. You'll reach out to the business. You'll have a chance to work with them on the project. You'll wrap it up, complete a survey, submit an invoice. And so that's kind of how it's going to go. In this section, we also talk about that we'd work with you on offering a webinar or some type of training for our small businesses. And so that would be part of the scope of work as well. In addition to the one-on-one assistance, is working with us to put on some type of educational event, likely online, but could be in person as well. Okay, and the last part of this section of the scope of work includes the on-call process. So it essentially says that it's going to be kind of on an as-needed basis. and that the project will start once the task order's signed, and then the work will take place according to what is defined in that agreement. Okay, then we go into submittal requirements. So this is a really important section, because if some of the components are missing, then the RFP could be considered unresponsive and it could make you ineligible. So again, make sure you read this section in depth before submitting and double check it before you submit your proposal. But we're going to go over it just so you know kind of what is required. So again, the document size, 30 pages maximum, not including resumes, table of contents, 12-point font. And I think that's those are the main points, but again, there's a certain size that we're able to accept, so that it doesn't get kicked back or doesn't make it to us. I also wanted to note here in the document requirement, I will be letting you know once your proposal has been received. So if you don't hear back from me, then please reach out, because it may mean that I did not receive your proposal. So continuing on the submittal requirements, so each of the proposals needs a one-page cover letter. And so, and in this section, it just has kind of 3 requirements that we need to see in that cover letter. One, the firm expressing interest and the ability to perform this work, indicating which of the categories you provide services in, and then a signature with the person authorized to negotiate a contract with the city. And this is important just so we know that the company is agreeing to move forward with a contract with us if the proposal is accepted, making sure that the CEO, whoever, knows that a proposal has been submitted and they're willing to work with us. And so that is all that's required in the cover letter. And again, that's kind of an introduction to the company, and providing what services that you'd be offering, and then a signature from an authorized party in the company. The next requirement is going to be your qualifications and experience of your firm and any key staff members. So this is really going to be the bulk of the proposal, you expanding on your experience, the types of projects that you've worked on before, and how you'd be able to contribute to the small business owners that are taking part in this program. Okay. So part 3 just refers to references. And so we'd just like you to provide 3 references, and just include the names, the emails, the organization, and current contact information, and also a brief description of how you worked with them. Were they a former customer or client? Were they a previous manager or something? So just providing the relation to that individual. Ideally, those references will be somewhat recent and also connected to this program in some way. And again, the 4th part listed in here is just reiterating the submission requirements. So again, we do need to receive the proposal by Friday, February 10th at 4 p.m. in order to consider it and score it. Okay. So now we're going to cover a couple of short sections related to consultant selection. So after the deadline has passed, the proposals will be reviewed and ranked by a subcommittee. The raters will be looking at qualifications and specific experience of key project team members, the quality and completeness of the proposal, experience with similar types of engagements. And then we'll also be factoring the cost involved with the services. Reference checks may also be conducted and factored into the scoring, but we'll let you know prior to conducting those reference checks so you can notify those individuals. One more thing to note is that we will be providing Tri-Valley businesses with local preference points. So their score might be bumped up just because we're really trying to support our local community here. And again, just a note, informal interviews may be conducted, but we'll let you know once we have a sense of what proposals we have and how we're going to move forward with that. So now we are jumping into the different attachments that are included in the RFP. So we really wanted to make this process as simple as possible. So we provided a template for the cover letter and the proposal itself, just so you have a starting point. You do not have to use this template, but it does show you all the required elements of the proposal. So this template includes your company information. This is also how we're going to know if you're based in the Tri-Valley and qualify for the local preference points, a section to express your interest and commitment to be part of the program, a place for you to provide a description and overview of your business, a section to list the different services you provide, your contact information, and then the signature line. Again, this should be for someone that has the authority to sign off on agreements for your company. And then the second page here is just a space to provide your qualifications. Again, this is just a template. I think you're going to have more than half a page of description of your experience and qualifications and your team. But again, this is just to show the different required elements. And then the final section here is your references. And so again, this is just a template. It's not required that you use this, but you can if you would like. And then we have a question in the Q&A about how many points are given for local preference. And then I will go over that in just a bit when we get to, I think, attachment D. But good question. Okay. Okay, this next attachment is also one that's required. So in addition to the cover page and the details about your qualifications and experience in your team, we're also asking you to submit a price proposal form. And so this template is on our website. It's also in our RFP bid section of our webpage, but you would have to complete one of these for each of the categories you provide, just so we have some sense and could compare apples to apples. And so up top is the business area. So you would put, I provide business development. Hopefully I got that, that letter right. And then you would provide a list of the services you provide. So if you provide assistance with marketing, then you would say, I can do marketing strategy, I can do logo design, I can do online ad campaigns. You would just go into the different types of services that you would provide, and then the range for the hourly rate for those services. And then you can add any notes, because I know pricing's not always straightforward, but that's kind of the gist. What the category is, what service you provide, a description of the different types of assignments that you can help business with, different types of projects, and then the hourly rate for those services, and then any notes that you want us to factor in or consider. And again, this will be for each type of service you provide. So if you provide assistance with business planning, but you also provide assistance with human resources, then we would need one for business planning and then one for human resources. Okay, so attachment C is going to be the city standard consulting agreement. So make sure you're okay with the terms that are outlined in there before submitting your proposal, since if you're selected, this is what we're going to be using as the basis for that agreement. And then I think this is going to be our final attachment, and this is just for reference. And so this is how we're going to be ranking the proposals. And so when we review the first proposal, they'll be the first. When we review two proposals, we'll rank them in order of kind of the strongest. And if you're a Tri-Valley business, then you may be bumped up one of those notches. And so it's not necessarily a numerical score, but it's compared to the other proposals that have been received. Okay, and just one more slide before we get into the Q&A portion. And here are just some tips and reminders for you. So first, make sure you start your proposal early and ask questions. Again, if there's any specific questions or clarifications we need to make in the RFP, we'll need to do that before February 1st, because we want to make sure and get those answers posted online by February 3rd so that everyone has at least a week of that information before submitting their proposal. We also recommend getting feedback on the proposal from a friend or colleague, having them review it for grammar or edits, or just to make sure that things are very clear. Since you're probably very close to your work, and it might be easy to describe it, but not everyone will have the same understanding of that work as you do. We also want you to be detailed with the examples you provide and your team member qualifications and the services. So the more you describe the type of projects and work you do, the better it's going to be on our end, because we're going to know, okay, this one consultant can help these businesses with 3 projects or these 9 type of projects. And so providing more detail is really helpful on our end. Also, just a reminder, try to limit the amount of jargon or acronyms, again, just to make it easy to read and to make it make sense to the folks that are reading this. And then another reminder to submit the proposal by February 10th. I would really recommend submitting before February 10th, just to make sure that it's in there and it's received. And if you send it in before the 10th, I'll make sure to look through it and just give you a thumbs up on whether it has all the requirements or if it's missing something. And so I might not necessarily have the time to look at it if it's submitted at 3:55 on the 10th. So please try to submit it early, and I'll take a look just to make sure that all the requirements are in there. And then finally, reach out if you don't get a confirmation email from me. I will let you know as soon as your proposal has been received, just so you know that it's made it in by the deadline, and that you'll be moving forward in the scoring process. Okay, so at this point, I'm just going to open it up to Q&A. Feel free to send in questions via chat or Q&A, and I can go ahead and answer those. Give you a couple minutes to kind of think about what questions you might have. Right now, I don't see any. Okay, it doesn't look like we have any questions. Where is the link to the RFP? So the RFP is in a few places. You can go to our website, dublin.ca.gov/Small Business Navigator Program. You can also go to, let me see if I can, oh no, I can't copy it and put it in the chat. Let me see if I can find it somewhere else. You can also go to the city's webpage and go under bid postings, and this is going to be listed in that section as well. But let me see if I can find the link and put it in the chat for you all. Good. When do you know you are selected? Great question. So we're hoping by early March is when we'll know. So we plan on doing the review in February, right after we receive all the proposals, and we hope to be in communication by the beginning of March. So as I mentioned, we may have interviews the week of February 20th. But again, I'm not sure. So I think the latest would be March, early March is when you'll know. That'll be the latest, but hopefully you'll know sooner so that we can start working on the contract. Okay, and then I have another question here. So do small businesses post for existing RFP, or can they put their information into a service offering database? So how the program is going to work is that small businesses will submit a form to the city saying, hey, I need help with my brand and redoing my logo and my marketing. And then we'll talk to them, see kind of what the need is, and then we'll refer them to a consultant. And so depending on the qualifications and the availability and the experience, then we'll match the consultant with the small business. And so the businesses won't be posting their project. We'll be reaching out once we find a kind of a good candidate. And then I have another great question here. So is there any thinking or preference for providing business owner assistance in person versus online/video conference? Yeah, I mean, I think for the most part, it'll be really flexible and will be up to the business and the business owner to decide how that works. That's something that we'll be asking when we submit when the business owners submit their application to get assistance, how they'd prefer to be helped if it's something that they're fine doing via phone or online. And so they'll probably be a mix. And then how many businesses are in Dublin, just to get an idea of potential workload. So we have lots of businesses in Dublin. This program is going to be specifically for our small business community. So businesses that have 50 or less full-time employees. And so right now it's kind of hard to get a sense of what the workload's going to be, especially because it'll be dependent on what category of need they have. But we have several hundred small businesses in the city. Okay, so I think I've answered the questions that have come in. If I need to clarify, please let me know. I'm gonna put the link to the RFP in the chat. So that you all have access to our webpage, and the same webpage, we're going to be posting the slides that we went over during today's presentation, and also the recording so that you have access to that. And again, feel free to reach out if you have any questions or need clarification on something. We're happy to help you through this process, and are really grateful that you're interested in potentially taking part and submitting a proposal and helping our small businesses. And so with that said, I don't see any other questions. So we'll go ahead and end the webinar here. But thank you again for joining us, and happy to work with you and answer any questions you might have after this.